Ferrari at breakfast. Call 0345 6060 973.
10 minutes before 8 is the time now. While understandably a lot of you want to talk about the tragedy in the Channel, we must reflect another big story on the news agenda, which is this nurses' strike. And on that subject, let's get into the conversation. Conservative MP and Minister for Mental Health and Women's Health Strategy, Maria Caulfield, who joins me now, and I'm very grateful. Can I ask you, how much shame should this government bear, because this is the first strike of its magnitude in more than 100 years on its watch? Good morning.
Good morning. I mean, it is a huge regret that there is strike action today, but health is a devolved matter. There is also strike action with the government in Wales facing all but one of their trusts on strike, and in Northern Ireland, the government there are facing all of their trusts going out on strike. So it is with regret that we're seeing this action, but absolutely recognise that pay is an issue for nurses. That is why we gave a 3% pay rise when no other public sector got one last year, and this year we've accepted in full the pay review body's recommendation of 4.5% for average nurses, but for those on the lowest bands are getting over a 9% pay rise. So we've fully recognised pay as an issue, and we've respected those recommendations to government.
But my actual question, Minister, was how much shame should this government bear? Because this is a unique achievement, isn't it? More than a century. And it's come on your, not your personal, your government's watch. It's shameful, isn't it?
Well, I don't know if it's shameful. You know, this is not a situation we want to be in.
To have nurses go out on strike for the first time in more than a century?
Look, I'm an RCN member myself. I didn't vote in the ballot because I didn't feel that was appropriate. So I, fully recognise the pressures that nurses are facing, with pay being one of those. But there are many other issues that nurses, have to have concerns about, whether that's staffing numbers, skill mix on the ward, whether that's long working hours or working conditions as well. And the Secretary of State, when he met with the RCN earlier this week, did want to talk about those to see the improvements that we could make. We are doing a huge amount in those spaces, but obviously we would want to go further to ensure that nurses have those issues addressed as well.
Well, let's give you due credit if you are a nurse yourself and you're a member of the RCN. Do you think a nurse should withdraw his or her labour?
I mean, I didn't vote in the ballot, but if I had voted, I wouldn't have voted for strike action. I've been a nurse for over 25 years. I was a nurse when we had, just over 10 years ago, the pay freeze and the pay cap, and I know how difficult that was. And when I became an MP, I joined with the RCN to campaign to lifting those. So absolutely, I recognise that pay is an issue, but that is, the government has a difficult position in terms of we can't realistically meet a 19% demand. That is the issue that we're facing, which is what the RCN have on the table at the moment.
We'll talk about that in a moment. They say that your government is not willing to talk about a different figure. But just again, should a nurse withdraw their labour?
I mean, I think it's a personal decision for nurses in England, where this government is responsible for healthcare. So we can't negotiate on behalf of the Labour government in Wales or the Assembly in Northern Ireland. We can only negotiate on behalf of England. I don't. We've only seen 44 of the 215 trusts going out on strike today. That's still too many, and there'll be thousands of procedures and appointments missed because of that. But personally, I don't think strike action is the way to resolve this dispute.
So you wouldn't. But you do think a nurse has...
I personally wouldn't.
No, but you think a nurse has the right, should they so desire? Yeah.
Absolutely, but that is a decision for each individual nurse.
Now, you mentioned trying to get a deal done. The RCN minister claim that you are, not you personally, but the government is not holding enough meetings, is not prepared to talk about a figure that could possibly have averted that strike. How fair is that criticism in your view?
Well, I think the Prime Minister, set out the story at Prime Minister's questions yesterday. His view is that the independent pay review body made recommendations which take into account issues such as inflation, skill mix, shortages, recruitment and retention, but also are involved in the unions in coming to that figure. It's not something they just choose on their own. And for next year's pay rise, they will be in discussions with the unions already. And that's the position of the government, that we accepted that figure. For every percent we go above that, that's £700 million we have to find. If we went to the 19% that the RCN want us to go to, that would be £10 billion that we have to find. So, without being difficult, they're not easy decisions to make. We have to find that money from somewhere.
You'll be uniquely placed to talk about this as someone who is a nurse and also holds the brief as a Minister for Mental Health and Minister for Women. There is a report from charities saying that cancer patients could die early because surgery and radiotherapy is being cancelled by these strikes. What is the veracity of that claim in your view?
Well, I know that the chief nurse, Ruth May, wrote to the RCN earlier this week to make some of those points. And the RCN have put in a derogation for chemotherapy. So chemotherapy shouldn't be affected, but unfortunately cancer surgery will be. And that's already on top of the COVID backlogs that we're seeing, where we are getting patients treated on time now in terms of cancer, first cancer treatment. But any effect, 2 days of strike action this month will only add to the backlogs that we're trying to get through at the moment.
But how are the RCN to get their point across if they don't take industrial action, is what they would say?
Well, we are willing to talk to the RCN about a number of factors. I still, as you say, do shift. And, when I'm talking to colleagues, pay is an issue, but it's only one of many issues. And actually working conditions, flexible working in terms of shift patterns, not finishing on time, not getting protected study leave like doctors do. They're all issues, and they're all issues that we are making progress on and can do a lot more. But I don't think strike action is appropriate when your ask is 19% pay rise.
Could Tuesday's strike be averted in your view, Minister?
It could be, and hopefully it can be. And I know the Secretary of State has said his door is open to Pat. And I think when she was, I've been doing the rounds with Pat over the last few days, Pat Cullen, head of the RCN, she won't come to a figure. And although they've reached a settlement in Scotland to avert strike action, that's not actually been formally agreed. That is going to the members, that's 7.8%. But the RCN are not recommending that figure. So that kind of gives you a ballpark of where they're at. And we'll know the outcome of that ballot on the 19th of December. So, a 7.8% pay rise, that's, every percent is a £700 million that we have to face. And as a government, our options, if we were to meet that, are either to borrow money, and we saw a few weeks ago what happens when you borrow money as a government that you can't afford, or put taxes up, which I think is highly inappropriate at the moment with cost of living pressures, or take that money from frontline services. That's £10 billion is a lot of money to find, and as a government we have to make those tough choices.
Lastly, noting on a separate subject, noting that you are a Minister for Women's Health, I'm sure you're aware of the tragic case of the lawyer Zara Alina, whose murderer was convicted in the Old Bailey yesterday, Jordan McSweeney. Now we learn that the murder took place 24 hours after police failed to arrest him for not attending his probation appointments. He was released from prison on licence on June 17th of this year. 9 days later, he murdered the aspiring lawyer on June 26. How safe are women if the police are unable to make arrests such as these?
Yeah, absolutely. And we are doing a lot of work in this space in terms of violence against women and girls. And in the last quarter of this year, we have seen progress in terms of rape convictions, and rape cases being referred to the CPS and then being referred to the Crown prosecutor to court. They're up about 90%. So we are making huge progress. But this is an absolute tragedy. And I know that many of us are deeply concerned by the fact that someone was released and was allowed to be out on the streets. We had the Sarah Everard case not that long ago. So women, absolutely, it's a key priority for us, and we are making progress. But the tragic events remind us how urgent this is for women.
Lastly, Minister, can we end on an almost positive note? The heroism of a fishing crew in the English Channel in the early hours of yesterday morning almost certainly saved the lives of dozens of people. Just regular, they were all men, by the way, regular fishermen doing their job on a freezing cold morning, pulling people out of the water and saving dozens of lives. Many of my listeners, they should think there should be some kind of award. I don't know, OBE, CBE, MBE. What would be your view of awarding this crew?
Oh, absolutely. I think, heroic efforts there. My constituency covers Newhaven, which is a fishing community, and the fishermen there have do come back and report when they see it's on the channel, see the dinghies out there, and absolutely to take the action that they did, and also to have to live with what they saw as well. Absolutely supportive of recognising their bravery.
Grateful for your time this morning. Thank you. Maria Caulfield is Minister for Mental Health and Women's Health Strategy and a Conservative MP. It is 8 o'clock. Here's the LBC News headlines.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock.